Hello, I'm Caroline Hardaker, the author of Composite Creatures, a dystopian literary novel which came out this year, and two poetry collections which came out in the last couple of years.
And I'm Gabriela Houston. I'm the author of The Second Bell, a Slavic folklore-inspired fantasy novel about a striga and her mother, and of the upcoming children's novel, The Wind Child, which is coming out February next year.
So excited for that one. And we are Bookish Take.
So in this video, we're going to be talking about the process from, like, once you've secured your publishing contract with a sort of traditional publishing company, what our experiences have been up to the publication date, from the moment you sign the contract to the publication date.
Yeah, which can be quite a long journey, can't it?
It can be. I mean, I've heard of people waiting for years. I think sometimes before people have actually had much experience dealing with the publishing industry, they think that, you sign a contract and then the next month the book comes out, and it's emphatically not that. Having a year, 2 years or more,
It was
run up is perfectly normal. Yeah, the waiting is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Isn't it? How long was it for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I was just going to say it's been different, I guess, for each of my three books. So they've all been very different, and it does depend on the press that you're with as well. So, for instance, with Composite Creatures, I remember signing with. Now I think I'm right in this. I remember signing with my agent in the March of 2019, and then submitting it later that year. And basically, ultimately, from Angry Robot accepting the book to it coming out was about 18 months, I think, which to me seemed like a lifetime away. I was like, what? That's so far. But obviously wisely nod when they say it. Okay, yes, that's fine. But the time flies by. And then when you're in the process, you do realize that there is a lot to do in that time. It's not like they accept the book and it's just ready to go. There is work that still needs to be done on it. Similarly with the two poetry books, which was with an independent poetry publisher called Valley Press, who are open for submissions, I think, at the moment, though they've changed their submissions process, but they're a great press. I think it was quicker with my first collection, which was Born Ovation. It was something like 8 months between it getting accepted and coming out, which was great, because I remember thinking, oh, later this year it'll be super. And then for the full collection, it was a lot longer. So they accepted it, and between then and when it coming out, it was probably about 2 years. But that was because they had to queue it up in their production schedule, which happens with a lot of different presses. And at the time, I remember being like, what? Oh God, 2 years. But even then, because I felt like it was perfectly finished, I'm so glad that it took that long, because it improved the work in it significantly, and it gave you proper time to work on the cover and the blurb on the back, and the end product is something that I'm much more proud of because of that pause. If it had come out in the form it was when I first submitted, I wouldn't be as proud now. But yeah, what about you? With,
I think so. The most difficult aspect of the whole kind of publishing journey for me is waiting for other people to read your book, waiting for other people to do the edits on your book, waiting for other people to kind of line things up. Or I am quite an impatient person, and so I kind of and I work quite fast as well, so I find it very difficult to switch off work mode when I get my edits back. For example, I work really fast. I do the work in days, and it's obviously not like that for other people for whom it's actual, you know, day job, and they have a list of, I don't know, 15 books that we're going to be editing over the next 3 months or something, and your book is scheduled somewhere in there, and it takes time, and, you know, they have their own lives, and your book might not be the priority for them than it is for you, and it can be it is a sort of experience in patience building kind of. Yes, because you can't hurry the other side. You can, you only have control over what you do, and it's not generally advisable to keep hassling people to sort of get things done on your behalf. So you just have to accept that you and what you want is not a priority for a business that is trying to kind of make sure that everything works well, and you need to focus on the things you have control over, and working on the next thing is very important. Well, for my sanity, it's necessary. Like I can't have just the thing that someone else is working on. Like I need to have those things in my kind of creative life where I have control over what I'm writing, over what I'm doing. So the moment my book goes out to other people, I have to start working on the next thing, because otherwise it would drive me nuts. So that's one.
I think it also works well at doing that in terms of like your personal satisfaction, because if you just wrote a book, edited that book, and then sent it out, and then you have to start from scratch again. Like everything happened very quickly. Like that book was finished, and then you did the next book. There would be huge gaps, like where nothing seemed to be coming out. Whereas I think personally, it's a lot more exciting to know that, oh, well, that book is on submission, but this one I'm starting that second draft, and I'm starting to talk to my agent about what it's about. And it feels like the cogs in your career maybe are turning all the time that way. It is like, I suppose it's like multitasking in a way, but to me, I find that nice, because I hate it. It's just a personal thing when nothing is happening. Like when that's gone, there's nothing in the works. I like having things in the works, and I like knowing that other people are doing something with something I've got, or when I'm doing something else. I don't like it when it's just me like plodding through. I find that super satisfying. So that is a good side of it taking a little bit longer, because they are turning the cogs and making it as professional and beautiful as they can while you're doing something else, and then you can switch over, and then they can do the next bit while you start something else. I just find that personally quite satisfying.
So in terms of what actually happens from the moment you sort of sign a contract, it's from what I understand, it's a very different experience for writers sort of contracted by different publishers on the kind of book you do, on what's involved in the process, whether it's an illustrated book or it's not an illustrated book. So that those experiences will be different. So this is very, like what I and Caroline are talking about is very specific to our experience, having novels published by an indie publisher, a smaller press who has sort of perhaps more time to also dedicate to each book. So I know this is not the same as the very streamlined process that I've heard of people describe from like bigger publishers. So the first thing that sort of happens is that obviously your book goes off for structural edits with whoever your editor is, and that can take months depending on the workloads. So for me, that took months and months, but still quite a few things happened in between where you have there's the announcement. So the marketing team will come up with a sort of press release, which is an announcement that will hopefully run in I don't know, the bookseller or Publishers Weekly or smaller sort of outlets. But you have to have this big announcement of this book is coming out in this month this year.
Yes. It's very exciting when that happened. It was great.
Yeah, so that's really exciting. And that's only then can you start talking about having sold a book, which is, like a wonderful experience in itself. Because up until then, it's more of a something is happening, but I can't talk about it. And so I announced recently my second book, the children's fantasy novel, The Wind Child, that's coming out in February next year. And there was like quite a long time between the announcement and when I got the offer. At least it felt like a long time for me. And so there was this time when I had a few interviews, and like people were asking like, oh, and so what's next? And I was like, there's something next, but I can't tell you about it. I can't talk about it because it hasn't been announced yet. And it's just
you tease.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily set myself up to be a woman of mystery voluntarily, but it kind of comes up as that. But you really, really want to tell people about it, and you're not allowed to. And so that's very exciting, this press release.
Well, there was something else as well at the time with Angry Robot, which I didn't have with the poetry books, but it's more of a novel thing. As well as it coming out in the bookseller, I think you did too, had a kind of official announcement in the sci-fi world, particularly. Were you in Tor? Was it in Tor.com?
Oh yes, that was, but they picked it up, so that was really nice. So they basically it wasn't arranged with Tor. They saw the bookseller announcement, and they kind of picked it up and put it on their outlet, which was really nice.
I had the same. I think it was Sci-Fi Now with me, but they also produced, they must have been talking to Angry Robot, because they produced an excerpt from the first chapter in that as well, which I remember thinking, I was like, wow, oh my God, like people are reading it already.
That wasn't, that didn't happen to me, but yeah.
No, I think it just happened with me.
Yeah, and
it was weird.
And then there's a cover as well. So the next stage after the PR announcement is a cover, and that varies wildly from publisher to publisher, just how much influence you have over this process. So I mean, Angry Robot has been so wonderful. I know, like I've talked about it before. They have been so accommodating, because I'm very pushy on the design side. Like I do have an idea of what I want, and I'm very particular about the font and the colors and the like energy of the composition and all that. And I was sending them so my husband collects like Soviet memorabilia, and he has like old newspapers, and I was sending them like screenshots. I was like, look at these fonts, and like, maybe we could like work around like this kind of typography for the font of it. Like I was a pain in the neck, and they have been so gracious about it, and like about taking all of this on board, and so like I know for a fact, with bigger publishers, like, forget it. Like, you are not going to get the same level of interaction on the design cover. Like, it's
true. Because I remember doing in my book launch, we had an author come and like have in conversation with me, called Cara Spray, and one of the questions was about the covers. And my experience with Angry Robot the way that I worked with them to do the cover was totally different to hers. I think she just saw a cover once it was done, and that was it. And then I think she saw like a different cover for the paperback, because it was hardback and paperback, and she didn't really have a lot of say. Whether she could have had say, I'm not sure, but it was more something that was just presented to her. Whereas with me, it was always a discussion. Like, I got initial sketches from the design team, and then I could pick my favorite and say like what I want. And even before that, me and my editor there, Eleanor Teasdale, had a Pinterest board where I would pin book covers that I like the kind of style of, or images that I like the style of, and illustrations. And they really did use that and went off that. And then I think when it got to the next stage, they sourced some illustrators from an online bank and then sent me 5, I think, and their portfolios to say, which of these do you like, and we'll pick that person. And in the end, it was a guy called Rohan Eason, whose style is really creepy and brilliant, and it's brilliant. But anyway, they went with him, and that was kind of my decision. I don't think if I'd have picked anyone, they'd have disagreed with me. And then they went off and worked with him, and we got some initial sketches back, and I gave a few little comments about making things a bit tweaked, and they went with everything. There was never a point when they were like, no. But I guess we were fortunate in that we were all working on we had the same thought process.
I think there's there's also like a balance on it, not just the size of a publisher, but obviously how big a profile you have. If you're a famous writer already, then like you will have more. Then you can say, I don't like this cover, and it will be kind of thrown out. But there's also like different stages, like you say. So you can sometimes have like the initial sketches, or where you can kind of have more of an input. If it's a cover that is like painted, for example, if someone like commissions a painter to do a cover, like once you have there's a cost involved. So it's like, if it's not to your liking, but the marketing likes it, then you're overruled, then you just don't. There's also like a balance of your personal aesthetic versus what sells.
Yeah. So
and
how it will fit on the bookshelf.
So an interesting kind of point, like with so I've seen the like initial designs for the Windchild's cover, and they're amazing, and I can't wait to show people what they are. They're really beautiful. But with the color scheme, for example, so the artist presented like, this is the alternate covers, like color scheme that is very different to the brief, but she thought, here, have a think about like what you like. And my kid actually pointed to this like alternative color scheme, and she's like, I like this one, I prefer this one. And though it was very striking, it was also very beautiful, I felt the initial brief hit it better for where it fits on a shelf. So it's not purely aesthetic decision, which obviously, I love both of them, and I think I do marginally prefer the one from the initial brief. But the thing is that it's not just meant to be a beautiful image. It's meant to be something that invokes certain kind of feelings in a reader who might be seeing it on the on a small screen, for example, on a phone. So it's all those other decisions, and it's very important to have that humility to kind of listen to the people, the marketing people, the design people who have more experience than you, and who will guide you. Everyone wants the book to sell. That's why they're doing it. That's why they're buying it in the first place, and investing all this energy and money into creating cover. So you there's an element of, okay, this is what you prefer, but you have to also listen to the people who know, like, if you pick this color scheme, it will be shelved in the wrong place. It will be, because and obviously different markets are very different. So the UK covers and the US covers are vastly different in the design. But as readers, we're so used to seeing covers that look a certain way, like it's representing, the color schemes representing a genre, for example, that we don't even think about it. We just see the color scheme or the font, and we think, okay, this is like this is a mystery novel.
This works.
This is like a thriller, and you can really see it if you put like like the top sellers from different genres side by side, you start to see the similarities in the design, and that is very deliberate. And there's only so much you can do to sort of push across those boundaries, because if you have a font that looks like a children's book, it makes it look like a children's book, and it's not a children's book, then you're confusing the booksellers, and you're confusing the readers who might not pick it up or might pick it up and not like it because it's the wrong image.
Totally. Like, because, you know, they do say don't judge a book by its cover, that old cliche. But when you're in a bookshop, of course you do. Like, it's all you can go off. Like, you can't literally pick up every single book in the shop and read the back, you know, or research the author. You're going to go off what you can see, which is the spine or the cover. And we all do it.
Exactly. And it's also having that like kind of understanding where that, you know, you as a writer might not have of how technology will affect the cover design. So to give that like example of the Windchild cover, there were different options for an design element that is sort of more detailed kind of framing, and the artist did like a very detailed decorative element, and she did like a simpler decorative element. And it's, although the more detailed one is an absolute work of art and it's so beautiful, we had to go with a simpler one because on a small screen, which is how most of us interact with book covers now, it's not just what's displayed in Waterstones, right? Because your book might not actually be in Waterstones, you know, where you go there. It's not it's not a given. So it's like, you know, so you will see it on your phone, you know, on the review or something. And if it's too detailed, if it's too kind of, you know, fancy Nancy sort of design around it, then it will not be visible. It will look blurred. It will muddle the design, because it's like a postal stamp. It has to be visible and readable as a postal stamp design. And I think it's very important to be able to step back from your own preferences or like visual preferences and like to allow yourself to be guided by people who are more experienced than you. And it's hard. And like, I know some sort of creative people and artists and writers who, like, I can sense like when it comes for them to sort of get through that process, that will be such a hard learning curve, because they feel so fiercely about every single element of their book, of the design, of what they want, that it will be really hard and a really painful lesson to actually be able to step back and allow people who have more understanding of how the book is sold to guide you.
And I think similar words can be said for when the publisher and the editor that you're working with there edits your book as well. And even if you have very strong opinions on whether it's the structural edit or the next stages, which are, you know, copy edits and having it checked by another editor, which happened in my case. I think I worked with, we did a little structural element, a structural edit, sorry, but there wasn't a lot to do there. I think most of the edits came in on a more granular level. So I think I worked with Eleanor and another editor at the same time to have a look at it, copy edit wise, and then it got sent to another editor just to double check everything, like with fresh eyes again, and to proofread it as well, because when you've read something enough times, you become blind to it no matter who you are.
Like it's a separate part of the process, but it's exactly, you know, what you're saying. So when it for that stage, when you first get your the big edits, the structural edits, what I kind of tell people I do is I give myself an hour, like literally set an alarm, an hour of raging and being like, this is nonsense. What is it, like, this is terrible. Like, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Like, give yourself an hour of raging privately and no more.
You see, my hour isn't raging. My hour is feeling massively overwhelmed.
Yeah, I mean, whichever one, but actually it helps to kind of clear your head, to kind of like rage for an hour, like, bitch to your best friend, and then sit down again and think about how you can use those comments to really improve your book. Because bottom line is, you have a professional who has spent all this time, whether it's your agent, whether it's your editor, and all this energy, and they generally, if they get to that stage, they do know what they're talking about. So even if you don't agree, and there will be times when you're perfectly within your rights to not agree with an edit, then the way I think about it is, like, rather than saying no, think about, okay, so there's an element here that didn't work for the editor, right? So there's an element that they didn't agree with, and why did it not work for them? So I see their proposed solution. I disagree with their proposed solution because of X, Y, and Z, but there's still the problem that I need to identify, that you need to kind of reverse engineering what didn't work for them. And sometimes, and then you'll find a better solution that actually improves the book overall. And it's very important to, like, if you, just because you disagree with a proposed solution, to not discount the edit. Because inevitably there will always be a way to improve your manuscript, and to use those comments to improve your manuscript. So, these are people that you have placed your book in their hands, and to have that respect for their work and their understanding that they're approaching it with the very best of intentions, and they're putting all of their experience and all their understanding into it. So to have that kind of respect for one another, to not just discount things just because your initial reaction is negative, because this is your book, this is your baby, or
you're terrified.
And there is that temptation, I think, as well, like, when you disagree with a solution, the temptation is, well, this whole edit is nonsense. It's like, well, no, they have identified the problem.
Yeah, definitely. It's a balance, because you're right, it would be easy to think, actually, no, they've not got that area of the book at all. So did they get any area of the book at all? But yeah, they're looking through it they're looking through the eyes of people that know what works and what doesn't work in the books that they've published, and they're trying to help. And yeah, your hour of raging and my hour of feeling massively overwhelmed, it's ridiculous, really, because with the overwhelmed side of it, because you've wrote a book, like, of course you can edit it. I think it's just sometimes you get edits back electronically and you think, there's 200 comments on this thing, but a lot of them are going to be very small things or different people talking about the same thing. And once you start working through them systematically, you realize that really you've already done the hard work writing the bones of this thing, like the thing that exists. Not even the bones, you've written the bones, the muscles, everything. It's just the skin that you're working on. And the publisher already believes in it and loves it. They just want to help make you better as well. And it's a team effort at that point. It's nice being in a team when you've been a solitary writer.
And having that, like, also, what I find really helpful and what I generally ask for is to have a conversation, like a video call with the editor, to sort of work through them. So there was like an element there that, okay, so I didn't agree with the proposed solution, but this is what I thought would solve the problem that you have identified and work better. And just to discuss it, like, or, if you really don't get an edit, like, you can, like, why did you suggest this? What wasn't working for you? Why did you sort of pause here and think, let's fix this. And I mean, of course, this is not my experience with this editor at all. I've had that experience before with my sort of first agent, where I felt she wanted to change my book into something it wasn't, and that is different. So you can have, you can sometimes have someone who is not connecting with an element of your book, or thinks, oh, actually, why don't you make this into a romance by adding all these elements that the book is not actually emphatically about? That is completely different. And, you know, in the kind of professional stage, when I was running, you know, with my current agent, when I'm working with Eleanor as well, like on the edits for the second battle, like I did not have that at all, because they know what the book is about. We've had this conversation. They like the book, so they are professionals who don't want to turn it into something it's not. So they're trying to work with you. And I think, you know, you might have a moment where you feel like, okay, this is like a red line, and like I can't, you know, I can't take this adult fantasy novel with, like, I don't know, like a gritty setting and like this like violent sort of backstory, and I can't turn it into like a children's novel. Like, this is not. So you know, if someone is actually trying to rewrite your book for you in along the lines of what you don't like, well, that is different. But I think that is very rare. Different. I have not come across it in a kind of
and I think you would know. I think you would know by then as well, because I think, as you said, you've had discussions about the book. Like, you've probably discussed it with the editor before you even signed the contract. Like, you know, you get a good idea of what their vision for the book would be and how it would sit in their portfolio, and where you would sit in their portfolio, and what their hopes are for it. So they try and make that clear from the very beginning, so that when the edits come, you can believe in them, because you know where they're trying to get to, and it's the same point you are. So yeah, that makes a huge difference. But
it is very important. Like, you know, I've seen how emotional people can get, and so that's why I give myself this hour. And it sounds comical, but if you give yourself like a deadline, like, okay, this is time for my emotional, and you're gonna have emotions because it's your art, right? Like, you're writing, it's your art, so of course you're going to have emotions about it, but you can't let it spill over into the professional sphere, because, you know, the people you work with, your agents, your agent, your editor, they're not your therapists, they're not your mother, they're not, you know, they're not there to for you to unload your kind of emotional burdens onto, you know. They're doing a job. This is their profession, and like, I think it's so important to have respect for that, and to kind of keep that kind of level of professionalism in your all your interactions. So, you know, don't respond to your editorial email immediately. You know, work through it, really work through it, then, you know, maybe have a video call, and like, don't, and you know, don't, I would even say, like, you know, like, don't go and like tweet you know, about how, because everybody can see those tweets, and it just makes you look very unprofessional, and makes you look like someone people don't want to work with, because it displays. I've seen people do that. I've seen people who have, you know, signed with an editor and or have an agent, and then go on like social media and enrage about professional feedback. And it's just, it is, and, you know, similarly, I've seen some I have seen some agents do it as well, but you know, it's generally like, it's very badly received, because, you know, you have all those people you work with, they can see you, they see what you're doing on social media, and it's not a private space. And even to, like, you know,
it's hugely damaging to the relationship with not only that publisher, but any other publisher that you might work with, because they will be thinking, oh, so this person just promote, like
it's a diva, basically.
Basically it's a diva, but also
yeah.
is very negative about the way we work with authors, and that's not good press for them either. And potentially this could be an awful lot of tweets, because the editing process from structural through to the final proof checking goes all the way through to very, very close to the time the book goes to print. So that's a long time for possible negativity to come out on social media. So yeah, it's a bad call.
So keep it to conversations with your partner or something, or your best friend. But maybe don't spill it over onto the wider world, or your people you're working with outside, because it's just not. I don't think it helps that much. Like, it helps to have that moment where you just go feel overwhelmed emotionally, like you said. Like it helps to allow yourself to have feelings, but then when you actually inevitably you look back at those edits and you're like, yeah, it's absolutely right. It's absolutely helpful to have those comments, and you will to not take feedback on board is just. I think a book is always it always needs editing. It always needs exterior.
Even when it's finished. Even when it's finished, you could probably do with it. But that's for second editions of them, right?
So it's not about denying emotions, but it's about making sure that you understand how much goodwill and how much work has gone into it from the other side. So it's not just you anymore. It's other people who have put in their work and their time into something, and having respect for that is so important.
Very much. But I think that's almost what we've got time for in this one. But it has made me think, because a big part of the route from signing to publication, I can't even say, is actually the promotion of the book and what goes on around collecting blurbs and getting you out there. But I think we should do another video on that.
So let's call it part 1.
Part 1.
Definitely we'll have to come back to this,
because it's huge,
because it's a huge amount of time, like we said before, from signing a contract to getting published, and it's a huge number of people that are involved, and it's a huge amount of work that actually goes on behind the scenes, that is done by yourself, is done by other people, and of course life doesn't stop after on publication date, so it just all the work does continue after that. All right,
let's do that as the next one.
That's the next one. So this is part 1. All right. Tune in, everyone, and subscribe, comment. Tell us what you were doing wrong. Tell us what you'd like to,
yes, exactly,
in the spirit of taking on editorial feedback.
She'll have an hour of rage, I'll have an hour of being overwhelmed, and then we'll make a video. So,
I'm gonna so regret it. All right. All right. Bye.
Okay, bye.